Ever since the Blue Origin spaceflight took place on April 14th of this year, of course, we know that there's been a lot of social media backlash, there's been a lot of online backlash, and even in the mainstream media, and those like Katy Perry, Gayle King, Jeff Bezos, his fiancé, have really been trying to actually go against the critics time and time again, going into damage control mode, trying to save their image to no avail. And we already know that those like Katy Perry, during her Lifetimes tour, it's only getting worse as time goes by. Now, after a while, she took a break going against the critics, but she's beginning to start it up again after she's beginning to realize that even her own fans are beginning to leave in droves, very much like what happened to Rachel Zegler, or even Meghan Markle, or other actors and actresses out there like Robert De Niro, or George Clooney, etc., etc. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Katy Perry right now is that we know that her Lifetimes tour stretches all the way until I believe it's December of this year, and once you enter into 2026 is when she begins to actually work on her new single that's going to take inspiration from her spaceflight experience. And look, I know a lot of people roll their eyes when I say spaceflight, but in reality, she only reached the edge of space. Let's be very real and factual about this. Now, what's interesting about all of this moving onwards is that we already know that Katy Perry is desperately trying to win back her lost fans, those that walked away after she acted very obnoxious on her spaceflight when she went up and came down. You know, the whole thing where she went against the critics and she got very much offended. That was a whole constant vicious cycle that she's only starting up again now. Ever since the Blue Origin spaceflight, however, took place on the 14th of April, those like Katy Perry and Gayle King have been dealing with endless backlash. One major development going on now involves more to do with Katy Perry going on yet another tirade after taking a break from firing back at critics. This comes after she lost not only millions of fans, but also after she lost her documentary deal with Amazon MGM Studios. Katy delivered the following. There are tons of unhealed citizens right now living in America, and those that don't hold any education, which is why we are experiencing a rise in sexism and misogyny and growing complications with all of that. When I took part in my space flight with Blue Origin, I knew this was my opportunity, my one shot, my one chance to reignite the inspiration that I needed in my life to continue on with my career. I still stand by my belief that when I went up to space, I dealt with the very same challenges that every astronaut does on a daily basis. When you go up to space, I don't care what anyone else says, but it inspires you, it changes you, and it reshapes your worldview. And I'm just deeply appalled by the behavior of so many men and even women acting the way that they are toward the fine crew that I was in that shuttle with. It's about time that we as Americans realize that we did, of course, that what we did belong in the history books. Our time going up to space is something that should be recognized by everyone in schools because this was our first all-female spaceflight, and it's something that should be celebrated. I think when you take a closer look at the situation, we are just dealing with a lot of jealousy right now in this country, and it's just another shred of proof that we are dealing with unhealed citizens that just need to reach a new level of normalcy. We need to improve society, which is why I am more than excited to announce that I will be sharing my spaceflight experience in one of my new upcoming singles in the near future, and it's something I'm working on right now during my Lifetimes tour. You will also see inspiration from that spaceflight in my upcoming shows, and announcements will be made of that soon. But when you are a performer, it's something to address the criticism and all the wrongs going on in your life and elements of life that you just want to deserve, that you actually don't deserve to deal with. It's about time that we as Americans, and well, not just Americans, but as humans, we should all begin to actually improve society and how we function. So guys, before I move on about Katy Perry's word salad there, and how she's going against the critics yet again, and obviously getting very bitter, very obviously offended over the fact that people walked away from Katy Perry as a singer, as a performer. Her hardcore fans even left in droves. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them really saw through all of the inauthentic behavior that she actually did when she came back down from the shuttle. And look, we already know that there's a lot of things going on with a lot of Hollywood celebrities right now. People are just very flat out tired of celebrities, either spewing out their politics or acting very insufferable or getting way too involved in nearly everything out there. And we already know that there's a lot of other things going on with Katy Perry right now. We already know that she is trying to salvage a career that is essentially no longer existent, right? We know that basically she's losing fans, she's bleeding fans, and her overall ticket sales in specific US markets, it's just not working. And that's exactly why you have her going against the critics, really saying what she's saying about her space flight. And at this point, it's all done and over with, right? This thing took place on April 14th, and she really just doesn't seem to actually get an idea or get a clue that the more you go after the critics, the more you begin to speak, against the critics, you're only digging yourself into a deeper hole, right? That's just how it works. We've seen this happen with Robert De Niro, George Clooney, Rachel Zegler, Meghan Markle, and many other personalities, actors, actresses, performers that just don't get the idea. Bruce Springsteen is another one out there that we actually discussed just about a month ago. Now, moving onward, she goes on to allude further to the situation. It's rather offensive, she says, when you witness the online criticism claiming that the experience I took part in wasn't as important as any other spaceflight that astronauts involve themselves in on a daily basis. It's all the same experience for astronauts and for those like myself that held the very same experience. So I ask everyone to understand me better as a person, not just as a performer, but as an individual and where I'm coming from. I will never apologize for my reactions to my critics. So there you have it again. I mean, she's comparing herself to an astronaut and what they go through all the time. Whether it's on the ISS or going up in an actual shuttle to actual space, which she never really did, by the way. She never even went into actual orbit. Let's be very real and factual about that. Interestingly enough, Katy Perry has no actual plans to apologize or to even admit that those claims of herself comparing herself to an astronaut are indeed not true. The fact that she actually still is spewing out that nonsense, that she had the same exact experience, that she dealt with the same exact experience that astronauts do all the time, is just ludicrous, right? And this is exactly why you have Katy Perry labeled as just as insufferable as those, as I mentioned before, like Robert De Niro, George Clooney, Rachel Zegler, Meghan Markle, the list goes on and on and on. And again, we know that Blue Origin got a lot of heat for this. They got a lot of backlash for this, which is why things have dialed down for a while. They're trying to actually, get away from the social media backlash, trying to get away from the mainstream media for a while. And that's exactly why you haven't had a lot of major Hollywood celebrities taking part in that space flight as of yet. So look, we know at the same exact time, the whole Gayle King, Katy Perry, Jeff Bezos' fiance going up there in space, and why it backfired. It had a lot to do with the desperate optics by Jeff Bezos, right? The fact that they had these Hollywood elites going up there in space, these self-entitled Hollywood celebrities obviously taking part in that flight, and their overall behavior came across as very inauthentic, right? We could all say that. We all saw through that. But overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about Katy Perry, her Lifetime's tour, situation, and the whole Blue Origin backlash still ongoing. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.